it's not that I will be speaking and my colleague Samo, but you will be speaking the majority of the time. So we expect that we will go through 4 different questions, and all 4 questions are speaking about the future of your countries. And we want to tell you some stories and show some small videos from our region. We both, Samo and me, are coming from Slovakia. Slovakia is a small country, and 23 years ago there was a kind of revolution. We had an authoritarian regime, the communists were controlling everything, and 23 years ago, very similarly like in Arab Spring countries, there was a revolution. We had a good luck, it was non-violent, but we were thinking that what a great time, revolution is over, no more needs to defeat the authoritarian rulers, and we didn't know 23 years ago that it will need more and more years. Everybody was thinking, okay, it needs 3 or 4 years and everything will be solved. And it's 23 years, and still we didn't finish some of the processes. So we'll speak about the good and bad experience, about the conflict transformation tools, what was happening after the revolution finished, about the coping with the past, how the societies were able to find a way how to cope with the former violent fighters, secret policy collaborators, the role of the army, troubles which we had with the former supporters of the former regime, how the religious institutions, what role they played, and what was the good and bad experiences of their involving into society, and what was the role of the women and ethnic and other minorities in these changes. We will do that in such a way that every time we will start with one topic, say some words about the good and bad experiences. Of course, we don't want to give you advices because you know best what fits into your country, your region. And maybe that some of the experiences may be some inspiration for you. But you know that finally everything will be different because it's so different. But when I was doing trainings in Jordan and Yemen and Egypt, and when we trained Tunisians and other people from Middle East and North Africa, we discovered that, okay, there are differences, but there's so much similar. We understand each other so well because we have the former rulers, they have the former rulers. We had the troubles to beat the violence, they have the troubles with the violence. We had the troubles how to control the situation and bring the democracy and discuss what is democracy. Same discussion or similar discussion is happening in a lot of countries. When we had revolution, I was 32 years old. I was so happy. I was participating in that, and I had the feeling that everything will be easy. Someone was in that time 3 years. So his perspective maybe is a little bit different than mine. I am poisoned by my past memories. He has a more fresh approach, what's happening and why. So we sometimes will show you the different perspectives. Every time we will say some words, show you a short film, and after that we will be discussing around the tables what does it mean in your countries. When the changes were happening, my naive image in that time was that it will be a dance. The society will be dance, and the dance will go one step ahead, 2 steps ahead, maybe a little wait, and progress, again progress. And after that, after 5 years, I've learned that the dance in Central Europe looks like that after revolution. 2 steps ahead, 2 steps back. 3 steps ahead, 1 step back. And after the next 4 years, I've learned that this dance, this cha-cha in the Central Europe looks like that, even more complicated. 1 step ahead, a little bit left, a little bit right, a little bit left, one step ahead, two steps back, turn, pretend that you are going in front, and turn again. It's not so easy. In the long run, this dance is successful. We are better off, a little bit better off than we were 23 years ago. But not everybody, and not in the easy way. When we had our revolution, so the British sociologist came into our region, and in this euphoria, everybody was so happy after revolutions. He came with a skeptic speaking, and he said, Ralph Dahrendorf is his name, German origin. It will take 6 months to reform the political systems, till we will have the constitution, till we have the system about elections, till we will have the equal participation. It will need at least 6 months. It will take 6 years to change the economic systems, till we find the job market for the young people, till we will regulate how the property has to be divided, till we will provoke the free market to function and the small and big businesses to be operating in a good way. It will need 6 years. And after that he said, well, and you need 60 years to effect a revolution in the people's hearts and minds. That the people finally will understand what democracy is, how to accept the other. You will need 60 years, 3 generations. And we were thinking, he's crazy. Why 60 years? 5 years and it will be over. The people will be happy and they will understand and they will be sensitive. It seems that Ralph Dahrendorf was right. We have very slow process in the minds of the people. When the first changes started, we were looking on TV, and my grandmother, 80 years, grandmother, lovely woman, she said, Dusan, when it will finish? It's horrible. Look on these people. And I said, what is horrible? Oh, this is horrible. They are quarreling all the time. They are shouting on each other in the parliament. These deputies, who will stop them? So I started my political education with my grandmother, and I said, Grandma, it's okay. They need to shout at each other. Till they will not kill each other, it's still great. We have to pay them, taxes, it's their job, and they need to shout all the time, that's democracy. No, democracy is not good. When we had this authoritarian regime, the leader said, everybody was silent, it was so nice. Everybody was polite. He said, well, democracy means that everybody's quarreling all the time. They just need to have the tools for the non-violent quarreling. It lasted 20 years till some tools for the non-violent quarreling were happening. And we had a good experience of finding some tools for the non-violent quarreling. After some years, finally, it was achieved that when the interest group has an interest, the law regulates how they may achieve their interests. If somebody wants to build the road or do the structural change, they have to pass the procedure that the people are invited by the law to participate. So in majority of situations, we do not need so much fights on the streets because there are tools by the law how to have organized discussion. After some years, we had the laws about mediation, about the ways of solving the conflicts outside of the courts. In some years, we had the systems how to teach mediation in schools. The result is that we have a lot of conflicts, but majority of them is non-violent. The people are going and protesting, The governments don't know what to do. Sometimes they do stupid things. Sometimes they are corrupted. But the confrontation is non-violent. And before the first discussion around the tables, I will show you how this non-violent confrontation looks. The example is from Czech Republic, from Prague, 3 years ago. 3 years ago, there was a trouble because local council Prague is a big city, 1.5 million people, and it has 90 theaters. Some are state, some are NGOs, some of them are small businesses, or large businesses. And each of them receives the subsidy money from the city budget. And the city budget decided that they will not fund every theater, they will change the way how they will do that. And when the theater people came to them, they said, we will not speak with you, it's not important, we decided. And the theater people said, well, but we are citizens, we are paying you. No, we decided, don't worry. So in the moment when there was a city council session, they expected it will be calm down, normal negotiations, normal decision. Something strange happened in the city hall. Hundreds of people stepped in and started to do a show around. Our law says, and the Czech law says, that it is possible to be in the room where the deputies are deciding. They are not allowed to step into the place where they are sitting, but they are allowed to observe. They are allowed to be present because it's deciding about their money. So let's see how it looked in this city parliament room. They've changed the tables of the street. The name of the square was Maria Square. They changed everywhere Mafia Square. The citizens are standing under the tables with the blankets and saying, don't worry, when we will be jumping out of the windows, we will catch you. We need the parliamentarians, so don't worry if you will be falling down of the windows. Everybody was making fun of them. And after 20 minutes, when they could not discuss, so the mayor stands up and says, okay, if you are behaving like in a pub, makes a bad joke, I will behave like in a pub. Puts away the tie, puts away the jacket, and stands the beer and says, for your health. People are coming and saying, okay, don't worry, the theater starts, our mayor, the highest person in the city, pretends to be the lumpen proletariat, the poorest people. And with this bad joke, he makes them even more provoking than before. So it lasts like 1 hour with this atmosphere. They cannot start. Our dear mayor, why would we leave Prague? It's so easy.
Přátelé, musím prostě konstatovat, že v této chvíli projednáváme tisk předčasného splacení téměř 4 miliard korun. Já chápu.
My dear friends, I expect you, but now we are speaking about the serious things, about the money, and the people are shouting, just leave away, don't worry. So he tries to stop the session, but instead of stopping, the people are singing more and more, and he's not successful. So he goes and tries to stop the session. And this was what happened. They were shouting that we will come again. So that happened 3 times. 3 times they tried to invite the session, first month, second month, third month, every time the same story. And after that, the mayor gave up and said, okay, we will negotiate. I understand that it's not possible. And there was a commission from the citizen theaters and the local government, and they negotiated and they changed the law, the rule about the financing. So it is an example that sometimes, even if the conflicts are sharp, it's possible to make it non-violent if we have the culture of respecting each other. Everybody was asking why he doesn't just ask police to kick out of the demonstrators. He knows that he cannot ask for the police or army because everything is taped on the cameras, so immediately he will lose the image, and he is afraid of the public opinion. And besides of this case and the other corruption case, he was not re-elected after 2 years, besides of such cases like this one. Your task is now around the tables for 20 minutes, discuss what possible tools for conflict resolution are needed in your country. What kind of laws, what kind of mechanisms? Is it something like regulations about how to protest, regulations about the mediation in the society, mediation institutions, education in the schools? What is needed in your country in next 5 or 7 years? Please discuss around the tables. How to cope with these people. We had a horrible bad experience in Central Europe because we had a habit that every 40 years, one part of society defeats the other part of the society. So we had a situation that there are the blue and green opinion, and when the green arranges the revolution, So they will kill some of the blue people, imprison some of the other people, and do not give the work to the others, force the people to leave. There are a lot of people who are emigrating, were not allowed to be in the country or had horrible conditions. And after that, after 40 years, some of the rest of this defeated population is coming back and organizes the revenge and win again another revolution, and they are putting bad measures on the others. So we have the situation of every time, every 30, 40 years, leaving an important part of the population, intellectuals, people who were important for the country. We had a bad tradition of having a lot of people who were not allowed to have a job. In the last period in 1969, after one kind of political change, 500,000 people, 500,000 people were not allowed to have a job. And a lot of them left the country and so on. And after that, again, there was a change in the society. So there was every time discussion how to do that it will be not finishing with a never-ending revenge. How to accept the population and how to work with the population who did horrible things, who were the secret police, who were the people who participated in the torture, who were the people who were ruling. Some of them were not violent to the laws, some of them were violent to the laws. And Central Europe, in every country had a different approach, but a lot of the countries did the so-called, they call it illustrations, or the situation of the filtering the people, that some people, by the law, were not allowed to have a job in the highest public positions. Some of the people were not allowed for 5 years to become ministers. Some of the people who were especially working for the secret police were not allowed to have the positions in the parliament. And it was a horrible trouble, because who may have evidence who was guilty and who was not guilty? And there were different approaches. Some people were proposing, let's do tribunals. Let's sue everybody who was suspicious to be guilty, and the court will decide. The others were saying, no, it's not possible. You cannot punish everybody because they have families. Some people do not witness and so on. So the others were saying, okay, so let's publicize the lists of the secret collaborators of the secret police. And if this will be public, the people will be ashamed and nobody will work with them. In some countries, officially these lists were published, like East Germany. In some countries, they were created but not officially published, and that created a lot of troubles. In some countries, they were not created but unofficially published, some of the suspicious. And some people went to courts, lot of troubles everywhere. Some countries avoided that completely. They said that they will not do that. And nobody can say what is the best approach, because on one side we need to have a feeling of justice. We need to have the people who really made horrible things should be punished, because there will be not a feeling of justice in society. At the other side, the society cannot function if it will be never-ending punishing of one part to the other. So the result was very different. Some countries had the law, Czech Republic, Slovakia, partly Poland, but not very efficiently, about not allowing some people to have the highest position in the society. And they had the law about, there was an attempt to have a law about secret policy collaborators. And there was an attempt to forbid the authoritarian regime political party, the Communist Party. It was never done in that way. Some countries said, okay, we need to forgive but not forget. We need to have a public procedure, 5-10 years, speaking about the story, remember, understand what was happening, forgive but not forget, that our children will know what happened. Poland has a statement, amnesia, but not amnesia. We need to forgive, but not to forget. It was a problem, and it still is a problem, even 20 years behind. The families are still living, relatives are still living. Some of them are ashamed for the relatives. Majority is not ashamed. And that's a big problem. So what happened, and maybe the same mistake will be not repeated in your countries. Maybe it's inevitable, I don't know. But what was happening in Central Europe was that the former authoritarian supporters lost the political influence for the first 5 years, but gained the economical influence. And through the economical influence, were able to come back to positions. A lot of them. One part of society during revolutionary times was singing and going with the flags, revolutionaries, and the other secretly was sitting and reshaping the contracts about the property. And while part of society was doing revolution, the other part gained the economical power. Property, and later, these which had the biggest success in the property were able to influence also the politics. The majority of the Central European countries. I simplified horribly, but this was what was happening. Different countries have different strategies. For example, when you look on what was done and what worked quite interestingly, in majority of the countries, the databases about the former collaborators of the secret police were collected, and the institutes were created which were studying that the next generation will be educated about that. Relatively most efficiently it was done in Germany, in East Germany. Not so successfully, quite successfully in Czech Republic, not so successfully in other countries. But in Slovakia, these archives have 7 kilometers of the names. There was more than 100,000 secret collaborators from the citizens of the secret police. Majority of the data was damaged in the first days of revolution. The secret police damaged the majority of the archives. Only 10% was sustained, and it is these 7 kilometers which now are studied. In some countries, they said, okay, let's not damage the memorials. This is our history. This is horrible history, the history of the communist leaders, of the totalitarian regime leaders. Let's put them in one place, let's do the memorial part, and the children will understand what was happening. So in Hungary, and also in Czech Republic, and also in Poland, they have the memorial parks with some statues which are collected on one place. And the people are going there, some statues are not damaged, but it is a part of the shameful history of the country. In other places, all the statues were damaged, all the symbols of the totalitarian regime, which maybe was a mistake because we do not want to behave in the same way as the previous regime behaved. In Czech Republic, they created a museum about the communism, and some people are going there and see what was happening. In Germany, they created a museum for the secret police. The big building which belonged to the secret police is now the museum. They are showing to the people what were the practices of searching the people and punishing the people and so on. It's very hard to say what is a good approach. We know that approach which is full of violence usually as the following has a revanche back. So some kind of balancing the justice and non-violence is needed, but nobody knows what works the best. People are angry after the revolution, and they have right, because a lot of families were suffering, but at the same time, the society needs to continue. For me, the best example of the constructive approach is not from Central Europe, but from Lebanon. Is somebody from Lebanon here? there was a situation which was horrible because after civil wars, that was necessary to rebuild the country. And Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri was an interesting person. Some people like him, some people do not like him, but he was able to have an integrative approach when he said, okay, let's try after these horrible events, let's come back and let's try to collaborate. And this is how he was able to renew the Beirut, which has a lovely center, originally completely destroyed. And they said, okay, let's try to renew it, and let's create the part of forgiveness, because we need to understand what was happening. We are a society which is divided, but we need to live together. So let's see a short film, how he was able to organize 30,000 of the interested companies and people to renew the middle of Beirut by integrative approach.
مش عارف انه انا بحاول مش عم مصاري يعني حدش غلط لانه
Many Lebanese agree the transformation is in large measure due to the vision and determination of one man, UN Habitat Award winner and late Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri. Lebanon has a well-documented history going back over 5,000 years. It was home to the Phoenicians, was part of the Roman and Ottoman empires, and after the First World War was a French protectorate. In 1975, a brutal civil war broke out and was to last for 15 years. By the time a peace accord was signed in 1991, much of Beirut lay in ruins.
The trees in the buildings are bigger than the trees in the streets, and it was completely abandoned with no infrastructure, with no roads, and it was very hard to see how we can start to rebuild Beirut city center.
But rebuilding did begin when, in 1992, Rafiq Hariri returned to Lebanon after 28 years in exile to assume office as Prime Minister. He brought with him a vision of a rejuvenated Lebanon and a restored Beirut. Ayman Traoui, Rafiq Hariri's official photographer, documented the changes taking place in downtown Beirut.
It was like forest. Only fighters lived here about 20 years until 1991, and I did take a lot of charge for this area because I know that sometimes we will build again.
Rafiq Hariri started to realize his vision of a Lebanon at peace through the creation of Solidaire, a partnership between public and private development companies. Angus Gavin, now the head of the Urban Development Division in Solidaire, remembers its creation.
Now what Rafiq Hariri did was to create a private sector development corporation, that's Solidaire, which is responsible for the entire development. And the majority shareholders are in fact all the pre-existing landowners and tenants, about 40 or 50,000 of them.
The project focuses around the historic core of the city, where you can find the heritage of the Ottoman and the French Mandate periods, and that area was fully rebuilt while restoring around 300 buildings. And the process of reconstruction was quite meticulous in terms of standards of rehabilitation and restoration of stone, restoration of the structure.
We didn't really know whether the stonemasonry skills still existed. And when the first few contracts were let for restorations on these buildings, stonemasons came from the Lebanese mountains and also particularly from Aleppo in Syria. And there were stonemasons, I remember sitting in the streets here, drawing on blocks of stone, limestone, and carving, copying fragments of salvaged detail on these buildings.
Part of Rafiq Hariri's plan was to make the city centre a place to live and work again.
It was considered as a very dynamic vision, whereas heritage is not part of a museum, but part of a livable city where people can live, work, play within a very old environment blended with a very contemporary one.
The creation of public spaces was essential to Hariri's design for reconciliation. One such space is the Garden of Forgiveness.
The city needs a space to heal, especially in such a charged location as the city center, quite close to the Green Line, where the city was divided east and west. And this was actually one of the areas that was first designated as an archaeological excavation. And we decided to make it into a garden.
Rafiq Hariri never got to see his plans fully realized. In 2005, Hariri was killed along with 21 others when explosives were detonated as his motorcade drove near the Saint George Hotel in Beirut.
At 5 to 1 o'clock p.m., the day of February, 14 February, Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri was in the parliament, and he take this road to go home. From this street, with his cars, too much cars for him, and at this point, where the flags there, the exposure down there, and Prime Minister died there. In this point, in this area, the area that he was loved so much. You probably recall those scenes of the Lebanese coming to Martyr Square to protest against his assassination and force the Syrians to withdraw from Lebanon. Something like 2/3 of the entire population of Lebanon came to that event. And many of those had been, if you like, on the other side of the fence, but they all recognized, and the country came together recognizing what a great man he was and the great achievements that he had made.
Coming up, downtown New York.
Okay, so I think that I can imagine some of you would be very strongly opposed this interpretation.
Yes. Yeah.
And I can imagine that a lot of people that doesn't like him and doesn't consider that for a good job. I was just thinking that yes, a big part of the people doesn't like him and has a good reason. Some people support him and have a good reason. But what is interesting is this ability to combine the business interests, people's interests, and trying to create some mechanisms.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Maybe it's not my business because we have Lebanese friends. But actually, if any one of you have been in Solidar, as a poor person, you can't go to Solidar. It's a very fancy place, and I don't see it. It's like okay, it's healing, reconstructing what was before all buildings, but it doesn't have anything to do with the human beings. I mean, I respect Hariri and I'm sorry for that he knows, but this is it's propaganda for Hariri actually. I mean, it was all about investing and money. I mean, you know, I have been in Lebanon many times, and he lives in Lebanon. We never heard of this forgiveness park, because it's not there.
Okay, most Lebanese like Hariri. Some have problems with his son. Because his death divided us, because we started accusing each other about it. If you look at this, is a good example for entrepreneurship, about business, about being smart, about business. But what you were talking about is stone, not people.
Yeah.
On the contrary, this area was in the middle of Beirut, where all Lebanese used to come, trade, have business, rich and poor, east and south, north, trade. Now, if you have 10,000 Lebanese, which is $7, you can buy nothing there. Even one sandwich, because it's so expensive. And most of the shops are full, but the apartments are empty. Because they are so expensive. We have to understand, we need a space in the middle of the town to bring people together, but not to be like this thing. I want to just give you, to warn about what message you want. If you speak about entrepreneurship, excellent. About rehabilitation, excellent exercise. But about reconciliation and about people, actually, it's not about because we are divided after his death. This was said by people who were like him before. When we rebuild both stone and people, not only stone. And we ended up with 50 million general public debt.
I think that it's very important what you are saying, because from outside it looks like a good example. And when we understand that people's relationships are crucial in that, the people need to do reconciliation. And if it's only about the stone, only about the business interest, so it's not a real reconciliation. We need also some aspects of that. We need the space where the different voices may be involved, but it should be not only the business voices, it should be also the ordinary people and citizens and inhabitants in that area, and everybody who may be interested to go there. And if it's like that, so it's not a good example of the real reconciliation and real collaborative approaches. What are good example is that when are the mechanisms that the whole society is discussing about that, and somehow the memorials or way how to cope with the past are created. Maybe it's not this case. It's very hard to find successful cases, whenever, but in some cases, when there are public discussions, when there are films in TV, when there is a discussion in the schools, that is not forgotten topic, that's the goal. So now we may a little bit discuss about, okay, what way to coping with the past we have. We told that there were different approaches of trying to coping with the former power structures, how to include the former fighters into the society, how to cope with the secret police, how to cope with the secret police collaborators, the citizens who were collaborating with the secret police, how to cope with transitional justice. In none of the Central European countries it was successful to have the kind of something what was happening in the North Ireland or South Africa or I don't know, Argentina, the kind of the commissions of the truth and reconciliation. This discussion was happening, but it was very disorganized, non-planned, chaotic. I'm almost sure that this discussion will be needed also in the region after revolutions. So now we will have 20 minutes to discuss what might be the good ways to coping with the past from your experience. And now what we will do now is that please let's discuss in other composition of the people. So one person which was writing the comments around each table, please stay in that table. And all the others, for 20 minutes, be so kind and stand up and go to another table. So we will mix the groups. We will translate this in some situations. The people will translate each other. So if possible, please let's change the group. So be so kind. One person stays who was writing, and the others please stand up and go to another table. Go to the third big question, which Central Europe had the trouble with, and probably it may have been a big issue also in your countries. This is the role of religious institutions and their role in transformation. In Central Europe we have a strange situation because we almost have no Muslims. There is very little Muslims now, only few tens of thousands in these countries. In future probably there will be more, but the prevailing religion in that region is Christianism. There are dividing, of course, to Catholics and Protestants. It's similar like Shiites and Sunnis. Maybe not so sharp, but it's visible sometimes, the differences. And a lot of small religion groups. There are also small groups of Jews in that region, different, but the prevailing and the most influential are Christians. And in some countries, very influential because they were participating in the revolution. In Poland, besides of the solidarity, there was also the Catholic Church, which was a main player in the changes. And there was a big discussion, what should be their role later? Should they be participating in the government? Should they have influential role in public decisions? What should be their role in the constitution? How it should be divided? Should it be divided in the model of dividing the state and the church? Or should they have some influence? The majority of the Central European countries, it finished in the model where it is more or less divided formally, but the religion is taught in the schools if the parents want. So the schools divided to the public schools, the private schools, and the religious schools. The parents may decide if they want that their children are in school, in the territory of school, as a subject learned also religion, or the parents decide, no, I do not want my child to learn religion in the school. The division of the property is interesting because the church was given back the property which was belonging to the church before, and the church has the right to do enterprise with the property or use the property, but there is a big discussion if it's a just solution or not just solution. And church has own channels of public information. They have own radio stations. They have, in majority of the countries, access to the people if they want, through the media. And there is a big discussion because in some situations what was happening was that the church was influencing people before elections how to decide. And that was perceived as a violation of their role in the society. So the majority of the Central European countries was refused. Sometimes the churches are divided, so they are not saying the same. And I want to show you the film which is showing the funny, sad situation. From Slovakia 10 years ago, the two minority churches were fighting against each other. And the priests, instead of declaring peace and positive values, were using the hate speech and were provoking the people to behave in a strange way. So what was happening in East Slovakia was that some citizens or some people in the small village burned the church of the other religion. And when it started to be very dangerous because it started to escalate, so the NGOs were saying, okay, we have to do something about that because it is completely dehonesting the society and it creates the tension in the society, not the peace. And one of the activities was very funny, that the NGOs asked the different churches to come in front of the TV and give a message to the people that we are distributing peace. We want to stop the violence. We are interested in the interest of our children. And to demonstrate that we are able, even if we are different, we are able to sing together and speak in the same language. And it was very funny because the negotiation about this act lasted 3 months. Every church representative said that, no, I will not participate in it. I will participate, but alone, for my church. But I will never sing with these people, and if I will sing our song, not their song. And if I will sing, together, I will not sing together because these are stupid people and they are not the right church. So let's see the result, what was happening on the main TV broadcasting before the Christmas. They finally achieved that 6 representatives of the 6 biggest churches came together, sang the song individually and after that together. After long negotiations, they've agreed that they will sing the same melody but different words and give a message to the people that, okay, we want peace for our children, not the violence. So let's see how it happened. The people were very happy, but it was a kind of strange situation. I'm not sure if the sound will work here. So one of the representatives is singing. Sorry. So the different representatives of the different churches are singing together in the TV. They are singing the same melody but different words. Something like that. We wish that the brotherhood love will be together with us in the name of the God for the future of our children. Something like that. And this guy said that I will never stand beside of this other guy because he was a secret police collaborator in the past regime. So I cannot stand it because it will shame me. And they quarreled 3 months, and after that finally they achieved it. So they sang first along each other. Based on this message, the people were sending a lot of money for supporting the children. So it was a foundation, the NGO, which provoked this event, and they were collecting money to have the children programs to support the children. Famous actor also joined the crowd. This is in Slovakia, 10 years ago. And finally they sang together, all of them. They hated each other, but they sang together. Everybody was making fun of them. Let's see the audience, how happy the audience was. So there was a big discussion what should be the role of the church, that somehow everybody understood that they have an important role, but at the same time they might be also dangerous when they are overcoming the borders. So the result was that after next years there was a lot of programs which was focused on coping with these situations. And what happened was that they decided that they will go to schools and go arrange the programs for the children about the tolerance, and they will learn about different religions in the schools from the neutral point of view, that the children will know about the other religions and will have a feeling from the early childhood, okay, the other religions are okay. It's similar like ours, and they use another vocabulary, but basically we cannot say that this is better or this is better. This is better for us. They went to the other activities. This is one week ago. They are arranging the European Interfaith Youth Network. The people from different European countries are coming together of the different religions, and they are discussing together 2 weeks, just to understanding each other and just to learn how to cope with each other and not to see each other as enemies. In the experience from the Central Europe was that maybe some part of the pluralistic approach, having different type of schools at the same time, different channels, different possibilities which are coexisting side by side, worked the best. From time to time, every time after 10 years, 15 years, there is a little bit more of the tension, and after that it decreases, and after that there is, but we, no more we have violent attacks as we had in the past. So your task now will be again to discuss, okay, if there are religious institutions, how to cope with the religious groups and institutions after transition or during transition. How to use the different models of the religious institutions, state cooperation or state supervision or financing. In Central Europe, what is happening now is that religious institutions are partly funded by state. The state is paying for the salaries of the priests, and the church owns some property and has own money and own possibilities for the programs, and the state makes agreement with the church that they care about some social services. They care about the poor, about the homeless, about the drug addicts, and part of their responsibility is to have social programs as part of humanitarian mission.
Was there like any religious party that won an election after what happened in Central Europe after the revolution? No matter compare what's happening now in the other countries with what happened.
Each country of this region has a party which is openly declaring being very close to the Christian values. In Bulgaria, there are also parties which are identified with the Islam, with the Muslim values. They call themselves usually the Christian Democrats. So the name of the party is Christian Democrats. The connection to the church is that they try to be a side of the church. They are saying that we are not the church, but we have the same values. And there was a lot of discussion how close they should be. If they were very close, so every time it created big troubles. And the people protested that it's not correct before the elections. If in the churches, the priest given the advice to the citizens how to vote and how to behave.
Thank you, Krishna. My question is that all those solutions or remedies, or to try to diffuse conflict and potential conflict, they are kind of like long-term remedies or suggestions because you don't see the impact directly. You just need to educate and instill certain values where people need to practice and exercise, and then it becomes a norm in the society. What were the immediate and fast, if there is any, immediate and fast solutions that were taken immediately that actually helped to minimize conflict and violence? Because after the revolution, there's so much hatred. There's almost people are more emotional than having a tendency to listen to that. So what were,
there were no quick solution, and there are still not quick solution every last lot of years. What was happening right after the revolution was that the constitutions were rewritten, and after a relatively long discussion, half-year discussion, in all constitutions in the Central European countries, they put that the church, the religion values are important for the society, but the constitution is based on citizen values. So every citizen has a right to declare whatever religion or non-religion, and it's an individual right of the person. So the state is not allowed to dictate some kind of behavior will be that let's stay for one round in the same groups, and please let's discuss these questions. Let's discuss how it might be organized in your countries and what you see might be the model which might work potentially in your countries, that it will try to have a non-violent solution. What should be the role of religious institutions and religion movements in your country? We would like now to spend last block of the time by listening from all tables short summaries of what you've been discussing about. So we would ask each table maybe for 5 minutes to say the main ideas which were discussed around the tables. You've been discussing about how in transition period have the conflict resolution tools, how to cope with the past, and how to arrange or how to work with the religious institutions. And there were maybe some very good recommendations and ideas around the tables. So we would like to hear from that table somebody, if you may summarize what you've been discussing in these 3 topics shortly. Okay, let's discuss about what you remember.
Constitution, respecting laws, empowering, acceptable.
Okay, it's not necessary to read it, just try to say what you remember.
For the second, we wrote about forgiveness, and we wrote about fair trials for people who are who have war crimes or economic crimes. For the third part, we talk about a ministry for religions to control the concept between all the religions.
So there was an idea that we should have in the ministry to
control spending money and collecting money, because some of them are collecting money to use it out of place for terrorism or something like that. So if we can have a ministry for religions, it will control everything.
Yeah, and your colleague from Yemen.
And also for the head of each.
When
we discussed about this problem of money spending, like transparent way of spending the money which they are collecting for religion, the colleague from Yemen said that sometimes that they think that it would be great not to have a ministry maybe on the national level, but that won't solve the problems. They think that it would be better to have some kind of international NGO or like network of independent observers who will do monitoring and in some way report about what is going on, because if I understand correctly, a lot of money is going on terrorism and ordinary people are giving the money for that. So that is like summarizing of this. I know that that's colleague from Lebanon agree, but that is what we talk about. In my country, in Bosnia, the religion is a huge problem. The biggest problem is the fact that the religion is completely tied with politics. Our political leaders use religion to, of course, get elections. So for my country, the recommendation would be to try to separate religion from politics. I know that it's like probably utopia and not possible, but that is what it should be, the main goal. Regarding, I will summarize a little bit more fastly. Regarding the transitional justice and reconciliation, we spoke about different commissions and does they work. We agree on some way that it should be some kind of court or something which will punish and give some kind of justice, because without justice there is no reconciliation. But we agree that maybe certain commissions don't work. In my country they don't work. We try to use different kind of models. The last model is regional
commission, RECOM, and ordinary victims and people who really did suffer and lost a huge number of family members during the genocide. They don't agree with the fact that 30 representatives of NGO will go somewhere, sit on the table and decide what it will be. So the mistake is that we have a process of reconciliation from above, not from like, I don't know, down. So it's completely, and the perpetrators and victims live side by side. We spoke about the role of this, like police and all this. So in my country, we have perpetrators as I don't know, chiefs of police right now. So you can see someone who took your 5 sons, for example, in Srebrenica, maybe of genocide. Someone who directly participates, now he's chief of police. So yeah, so basically, I was talking. I think if you summarize what you talk about, I will.
Great, thank you very much. We may add if you want something.
Yeah.
We have a religion committee as an industry, but it doesn't work because Azerbaijan is a very corrupt country, and that's why we have some religion sector, and the government don't control them. And that's why they influence very badly for society. Maybe we need more transparency in this problem too.
Thank you very much. One more.
I think we must talk about driving the economic resources for these religions parties. Because these days, if we can drive these economic resources by controlling from the state itself, we can reach some kind of peace between religions and between also inside the country. In Iraq, if you remember, there was collecting money from poor people to support poor people, but in fact they was using them for bombs to kill people, to kill themselves. So people was killed by their own money. This is what we are talking. Also, if we have a ministry which is responsible for all the religions, at that time we can't use it for just one religion, suppose for Muslim, for Christian, for the Jews, to make hate speech about the other religion. This time we can, but of course we must have no corruption or not some kind of religion which is putting hand on this ministry. It must be from the all and on there.
Great. I may share the experience from the Central Europe that was a big problem how to control the financing of political parties. And every of these countries has own laws which force the political parties to be transparent, and the political parties are very skilled to find a way how to hide the real numbers. So there is a never-ending story of finding the new better way how to control them, and new better way for the political parties how to hide that. And this discussion is happening already for 15 years. But situation is slowly improving. Slowly improving, it's more transparent, they are forced to do that, but at the same time, there are still some troubles. Thank you very much. What was discussed here? In Arabic or English as you want?
طيب احنا في الاول كنا جروب من ليبيا ومن مصر، فاتفقنا ان احنا نشوف ايه الاولويات. احنا كنا جروب من ليبيا ومن مصر، فاتفقنا ان ايه اولوياتنا في الوقت الحالي بالنسبه للبلدين. يعني كان الدستور وكذا نقطه تحتيها ان ازاي نقدر نضمن المعاهدات الدوليه والاتفاقيات المتعلقه بحقوق الانسان وحريه الفكر والتعبير في الدستور، ازاي نقدر نعمل تشبيك مع جهات مهتمه او NGOs اخرى مهتمه بصياغه الدستور عشان نخلق جماعات ضغط، ازاي نقدر نخلق قنوات حوار مع صناع القرار فيما يخص الدستور او لجنه تاثير الدستور، بدل ما نبقى بنتعامل معاهم على ان هم اعداء مثلا او ناس ضدنا، بالعكس نحاول نوجد قنوات حوار ايجابيه بحيث ان احنا نؤثر في صياغه الدستور. بعد كده فكرنا في ان احنا محتاجين توعيه مجتمعيه بحتميه سلميه المطالب وطريقه التعبير عنها، وده هيتم عن طريق ان احنا نعمل حملات توعيه. بعد كده عمران هيتكلم عن الجزء الثاني فيما يخص التعامل مع الماضي وفترة التحول.
I joined this group for the second point, coping with the past. We figured that reconciliations and tribunals are the way to go, but it shouldn't result on heavy executions or jail sentences or anything of the sort. We came to a conclusion that if you are convicted, you could be excluded from political positions for a period of time. And if you're a victimized, you could be agreed for a compensation by the state whenever the state can afford so, which is one of the first points we came up with. And the other point is that since in transition countries we don't have very strong democratic institutions and the security apparatus is very much used to doing whatever they wanted to do, to introduce very strong code of conducts among them and it to be in place with international best practices. The other thing we noted is to raise monuments or whatever that's going to show to the children or the people to remind that this was going on in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I'm going to talk about the third point, the most controversial one, the role of the religious institutions in the community or in the peace building process in general. Actually, I'm going to talk about the very specific point of view, which is the Egyptian case. In Egypt, mainly the first point to propose is the voice okay?
Hello?
It's working? Okay. So the first point to consider is the law. By the law is to enforce the Muslim Brotherhood, for example, to register an NGO. To have an NGO by their name, first of all, so we will be able easily to know from where they are getting their money and what are they paying the money in. So this is the first point. Our second point will be mainly about the political parties establishment law, which is it's strictly prohibited to establish a political party with a religious background that is promoting discrimination, for example, that is promoting some sort of ethics against, not ethics even, like principles against like tolerance. And this is a case that we have in Egypt right now. And so simply all the political parties, and we don't have any problem if a party wants to have a religious background, but at the same time we want an overview or an outline that they have to work in, which is, for example, like if your principles or goals or objectives are really promoting or helping or developing or maintaining the democratic process, then no problem to establish a political party. But if all your target is to have a political party to compete in the elections by writing up some religious slogans and say some like sort of, you will go to heaven if you will vote for me, for example, then I don't really want this guy or people to participate in the elections. So this is the second point. The third one will be mainly about the constitution, which is in the constitution here in Egypt, in the second subject of the constitution, is saying that the Islamic legislation is the main source of the law, of creating laws in Egypt. Which is okay, I don't have a problem with that. But at the same time, if you are talking about who will analyze or tell us what is the Islamic legislation, there will be some politicians doing that. But again, I'm sorry, politicians are not these people who are specialized in something like this. And the other point is there is another subject nowadays in the upcoming referendum, for the constitutional referendum, is saying that the main reference for the Islamic legislation will be Al-Azhar, which is a religious institution that is directly interfering in the political process in Egypt, which means it's a direct theoretical system. It's a pure theoretical, 100%. Okay, so what we're talking about, okay, by the way, the Azhar is a very moderate institution, but by the end, what about the upcoming decade? Will it be also neutral or moderate? Who knows? So we're talking about like making the constitution, or the main reference for us is the highest constitutional court, the specialized people.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Beautiful, very bright ideas. What was your discussion here? What were the main ideas?
هلا الموضوع الاول كنا من لبنان والاردن ومصر حكينا بقضايا المواطنه والعداله الانتقاليه واهميه الدستور، اهميه تشكيل الدستور. واظن كثير من النقاط راح تتكرر بين الجواب. قضيه التعامل مع الماضي وكان النقاط اكثر من ليبيا، كل مجموعه من ليبيا وفي وقت لأنه مصر كان موضوع ارجاع تفاوض ارجاع حقوق المظلومين ومعاقبه المسؤولين السابقين المتسببين في قتل الناس. ارجاع الاموال المسروقه كاحد الخطوات المهمه للمرحله الانتقاليه. قانون لمنع العمل السياسي في الفتره اللاحقه للمتسببين من النظام السابق، والمصالحه الاجتماعيه وخاصه بمجتمع قبلي.
عن دور المؤسسات الدينية، كان أول نقطة فصل الدين عن السياسة والحوار مع المجموعات الدينية لضمان حقوق الجميع في الدولة، التعاون مع المجموعات الدينية للوصول إلى حلول تناسب المرحلة، سيادة القانون ولضمان حقوق الأقليات. في نقطة بسيطة حابة أضيفها، هي أن المشكلة مش في الدين، المشكلة في رجالات الدين، يعني بغض النظر إذا كان هو قسيس ولا حتى خطيب جامع، لأن كل الأديان في العالم تدعو إلى التسامح. إذا المشكلة في الاجتهاد اللي هو المذهب، يعني حتى في العرض اللي حدث لك عرفتها كانوا كلهم مسيحيين، لكن المشكلة في انتماءاتهم المذهبية هي اللي فيها مشكلة. إذا المشكلة في اجتهاد الناس مش في الدين في حد ذاته، لأن كل الأديان تدعو إلى التسامح.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Let's listen to your table. What the main ideas were said here?
I just want to mention only one. In my part of the world, we believe that the only problem we have is religion. I told my colleague here that, for example, the Nigerian economy spent $4 billion on Muslim and Christian every year for pilgrimage to Mecca and to Jerusalem. And that was why I was asking you how much the streets in your country pays to the priests. And these guys that they spend $4 billion don't pay any tax. So if we, to me, in my view, if we get rid of them, we will save $4 billion that will be spent on education and healthcare and other things. So let me give you to the other people to have this conversation.
Dealing with the past, we discussed the issue about Truth and Reconciliation Commissions. And we expressed the Lebanese model in 91 after the end of the Civil War, where there is public pardon for everybody. We thought it was not a good idea. We need to have a pardon, but this will, for the coming Civil War, everybody will kill in that case because nobody was punished in the previous Civil War. We spoke about collective memory as a sufferings, to consider this also. We spoke about high profile and pushing the human rights within the international human rights bodies. And we spoke about building peace assets, like mediators, facilitators, either customary or other types of peace assets.
Okay, I will continue with
social service role in the society. We will keep the religion completely out of politics, but they will be important in the society for bringing new topics to the society, as explaining to people that corruption is bad, that transparency is important, etc., etc. They the possible mediators, not the only one, but one between the groups, enemy groups. And we see importance in opening religious schools.
Great, thank you very much. There was a lot of said already, but maybe you have something to add if you want.
Well, if you have the time.
3-4 minutes, yes.
Okay. We're going to talk so briefly about what we brought here because we are just too, we don't want to take more time. First, we talked about how to solve conflicts